But I think we really must think about what are the secondary effects of these sanctions? What is the effect going to be for Russia? And does this actually all just play into Russia's hands?
A Ryanair flight traveling from Greece to Lithuania was recently forced to land in Belarus, whereupon a Belarusian dissident and journalist was removed from the plane. Joining us to explain this event in more detail is Nicholas Babaya, who is the CRA's head of geostrategic analysis. Nicholas is now based in Florida, USA. Nicholas, could you explain the details of this incident to our viewers?
Well, this was quite an extraordinary incident, and we're still seeing some of the reactions coming through from the European Union. Basically, what happened is we have Ryanair, which is an EU-registered airline, so they fly all throughout the European Union, but it originally comes from Ireland. It was taking off from Athens in Greece en route to Vilnius, the capital city of Lithuania. And on board this plane was a gentleman by the name of Roman Pratasevich. He is a prominent pro-democracy and anti-government journalist and dissident, currently living in exile with Belarus. He was on the plane with his girlfriend. The plane was on its way to Lithuania when it was forced to land over Belarusian airspace. Belarusian air traffic control contacted the pilot of the plane to say that they had been informed of a bomb threat. And as a result, the plane was escorted by a Belarusian fighter jet to land at Minsk airport in the capital of Belarus. The plane was then searched thoroughly by Belarusian police, and there Protasevich and his girlfriend were arrested. And the three other individuals from the plane also walked off. We are not certain who those people are, but it is suspected that they may be Belarusian KGB. A video was later released by Protasevich in which he stated that he had been treated fairly and that everything had been according to law and order. However, many people have suspected that this video was recorded under duress. In any case, this was quite a shocking incident to many, both in the political sphere and in the aviation world, as it essentially amounted to a government forcing an airline of a different country to land so that it may arrest a political dissident. It saw some sharp blowback from the European Union, and it really is quite a shocking thing to happen in the world of civil aviation, and thus it's been quite a big news story recently.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
Nicholas, what has been the response from the European Union?
Well, I think it was interesting to see the response from the EU. One thing to remember about the EU is that it has many, many member states, and they don't always agree on anything. But in this case, Belarus was roundly condemned by various EU leaders, not just the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, but also many individual heads of states of European member states. They've agreed since to a fresh round of sanctions. Many airlines from EU countries have voluntarily stopped flying over Belarusian airspace. They've now rerouted their flights over different countries. And in many instances, Belarus's state-run airline, Babaya, has been banned from flying over the airspace of certain European countries. These are still developing, and there will be some changes in future. But right now, we have seen quite a massive change, at least in the world of aviation, concerning Belarus. There was also a large European Union investment deal scheduled to be given to Belarus, but this has since been halted until the country, quote, turns democratic. Those were the words used to describe the terms under which the investment would be given to Belarus. But I think the important thing to notice here is that the EU can sometimes be a little bit chaotic and complicated because of the sheer number of members that it has. But this event was really quite shocking. You had essentially an Irish registered airline flying from one EU member state, Greece, to another in Lithuania, and it was forced to land because of what many people now think of as a totally spurious bomb threat over a third country to arrest a dissident. So this amounted to something called extraordinary rendition, when a country abducts, for lack of a better word, one of its citizens in order to put them on trial. And I think this was just really shocking, and the EU really kind of rallied around together in order to respond to this.
Okay, Nicholas, so that's the EU, but what about Russia? What has been their response to this incident?
Just to give a little background between the relationship of Belarus and Russia, Belarus is obviously a post-Soviet state. They're a majority Russian-speaking, and they're very authoritarian, and this makes them a bit of a pariah in the eyes of the West much of the time. So they have remained very close allies with Russia, and there has even been some talk of them acceding to become a part of the Russian Federation. Even with that being said, there have been a number of little squabbles and disputes between Belarus and Russia, particularly in the 2010s. Some of these are over oil and gas pipelines. Some of these are over trade disputes, particularly in the dairy industry. And Belarus still does get a very large amount of exports and imports from both the European Union and Ukraine. So it's not as if Russia has a total monopoly over Belarus, even though they are very close partners. Russia has generally supported Belarus, and at least from viewing Russian state-owned media, RT, and so on, they've generally tried to push a line that is supporting Belarus in this effect.
Nicholas, let's get back to this point about the EU sanctions. Do you think that those are going to be effective in helping to resolve this dispute?
Well, this is a very interesting question, David. And I think the thing to understand here, especially when we look at the relationship between Russia and Belarus, remember, Russia is not the one putting sanctions on Belarus. We can see the blowback or the secondary effect of the sanctions. So Belarus right now has a lot of economic involvement in both Russia and the EU, and to a large extent Ukraine as well, which is not an EU member state, but certainly not on the Russian side of this new Cold War. What might happen if there are broad-reaching, very significant economic sanctions that significantly limit the amount of activity and trade that Belarus does with the European Union and Western nations in general? We might simply see the country weaken a bit, but also be pushed into the arms of Russia, as it will be left no alternative. So this is always the secondary effect of sanctions. When one side says we don't want to do business with you anymore, the result is that country that is being sanctioned is always going to look somewhere else. Now, a lot of Belarus's pro-democracy and opposition party activists are calling for sanctions, and we often see this in countries that are authoritarian and persecute politically their political rivals. But I think we really must think about what are the secondary effects of these sanctions? What is the effect going to be for Russia? And does this actually all just play into Russia's hands? This is something I think world leaders have maybe not considered to a great extent, but it is indeed a very real effect of sanctions and why they don't always work.
Thanks very much, Nicholas. If you enjoy our analysis on YouTube, you might also consider becoming a client of the CRA. We're running a 30-day free trial at the moment. There's a link in the description below, and you can sample all of our reports and other advisory services through that route. My name is David Ansara. This is the Center for Risk Analysis. Until next time, take care.